I'll never forget that day standing on the set and looking at 60 people scurrying around. And I was like, I did this. I brought this together and on budget.
Hey, Matt Stone here, and welcome officially to The Bigger Stage. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you may know this show used to go by a different name, The Building Business Relationship Show, and I couldn't think of a better episode to kick off this next chapter than this one. My guest is Nina Froriep, a filmmaker, producer, a LinkedIn coach, and honestly, one of the most unapologetically real people I know. She grew up in Zurich and ended up in New York City producing feature films, commercials, and documentaries. And these days, she's using those skills to help coaches and consultants find their voice on LinkedIn. It's a winding road with some great stories and insights along the way and a few laughs, a genuinely great one. And I think that's exactly why I wanted this to be the bridge episode, because this conversation isn't really about LinkedIn tactics. It's about the journey, Nina's journey to a bigger stage and even bigger learning. And I think if you let it, it'll make you stop and reflect on your own, where you started, the turns you didn't plan on, and wherever it is that you're heading next. So sit back, enjoy this one. I think you're really going to love her. Let's go. Joining me today is Nina Froriep. Nina is an experienced filmmaker and producer and many other things, who brought her talents a number of years ago to the world of helping coaches, consultants, and creators find their voices on LinkedIn and learn how to build awareness and relationships on the platform that fuel business growth. So I'm curious to find out more about kind of Nina's path to this profession and what she's learned along the way that maybe will help you on your own journey, whatever that is. One thing I also know for sure is that Nina is unapologetically real. That's why we became friends so quickly. She does not hold back, for better or for worse. And if you recognize and accept that about Nina, you will love her like I do.
Okay, good. Good. Thanks for saying that. I just said
Yes.
something today and I'm like, oh, Nina, that
What
was a
did
little
you say?
straightforward. What did I do?
Well, it truly is endearing to me. And, that's why our friendship has blossomed. So I appreciate that you also can have a good sense of humor about things. And I just want to close out my little intro by saying, as Nina puts it, and this will kind of tell you about her personality, she's Swiss by design, savvy by New York. So it's great to have you here, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have a different conversation today. So that'll be fun.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and you'll always have a special place in my heart because when we moved to, we live in New Jersey. We're right across the river from Midtown Manhattan. So we're in the greater New York City area. And so we move here and, I don't really know anyone. I've got some family. Actually, I have a stepbrother who lives about an hour away and a
Hmm.
good friend from law school from a
Yep.
very different part of the world, like, who lives in New Jersey, actually near the Pennsylvania border. But other than that, I really didn't know anyone here. And I'm trying to, we moved from abroad and we're here in the US again. And, I hadn't lost my connection, but I was just trying to make my way. And you kind of helped me in
Good.
many respects, especially online, to kind of get into the game here. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right. So Nina, we're going to talk about LinkedIn a little bit. Well, I do have a few kind of hot topic, kind of fast takes from the expert kind of questions later,
Okay.
but I do want to put that off because you have such a great history, and you're originally from another country, but you've lived in New York a long time, and so you just have this rich perspective and background. And I love the filmmaking producer background. So can we just start by going kind of in the way back machine when you were first growing up? And this is kind of it's a bit of a cliche question, but I mean it genuinely. Like, what did you think you wanted to do when you were a little girl running around the Alps? Do you
Oh
remember
boy.
that?
Other than be a princess, and then I wanted to be a singer, and it actually goes right to the jugular. This question, at least in my case, because the way I was raised, the options were limited. Right. I was a female. That's number one, and probably the most important part. And I came from a certain family background. So I don't have a rich, a poor to riches story. I just have a riches to riches story. And the expectation was, um, very clearly from day one on. You get married, you have children, you're an interesting wife to your husband. So education was very, very important, but only as so far as to be that interesting wife to hopefully some higher end husband, whatever that means, right? Um, so on one hand, it left all the doors open for me to fantasize about all the things I would be doing, because there wasn't that you need to work, 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 work until you dead, drop dead. But at the same time, there was also just nothing to latch onto, right? There was no real examples other than motherhood, marriage and motherhood, and sometimes the other way around, right? That I could live into. So the fantasies were, yeah, were pretty fantastical. Being a singer in the lead singer in the band, aforementioned princess. At some point, my mother instilled in me that I was a good writer, so I should become a writer because that was something I could do from home while taking care of the children. And that was about it.
Mm. Did you grow up in Switzerland?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. You stayed in
Completely.
Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was we traveled a lot. We did a lot of cultural travel. I very early in my age, I went to Houston, Texas by myself for 4 weeks in one summer. I mean, obviously to a family, but I traveled there by myself. And so, I mean, I had a lot of exposure, but it was always within the I live in Switzerland, and I grew up in Zurich, so it was always Switzerland until I was 23 and came to New York.
23. I got it. I didn't know you went to Houston. That's a new tidbit. What was that like landing in oil country in Texas?
I
From
was 11. It was a little crazy. It was this, you know, that was like such a cultural faux pas. So my parents meet this couple at a lawyers conference. My father's a lawyer, or was a lawyer, and this guy's a lawyer too. And you know how Americans say we should meet or we should exchange our children, and a Swiss person, they don't read the should as it's never going to happen. It's just being polite. So a Swiss person, this person reads, this is going to happen, pull out the calendar, make a date, right? So before these poor people in Texas knew it, I was on a plane to go and visit them for the summer. Um, and I don't think anybody realized what Houston is like in July or August or whenever that was. So, introduction to air conditioning, introduction to TV dinners, introduction to a shit ton loads of candy, introduction to stand up bingo, which I won. Got $100, which back in we're now talking. I'm 11, so this is 76. So that was like it would be $1,000 today, right? That was so much money. And these poor people who kind of didn't know what to do with me. I mean, they had daughters my age, but it was just worlds, absolute worlds. And then I took care of them visiting us by telling them that we had no TV, and that then put a total stop to any kind of conversation about them coming to visit us the next summer.
So you knew even at 11 that this was
Oh
not a
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
viable.
knew that this was not going to happen.
There's not a follow-up act to this. This is a one
No.
and done.
That's a one
Yeah.
and done. Yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad, but I went all this way. The best part to it was flying. Back then there was no direct flight, so I had to fly out of Paris. And my mother and I flew to Paris, spent 2 or 3 nights in Paris before I was shipped off. That 3 days in Paris with my mother, that was fantastic time.
Was that your
We
first time to Paris or
probably at 11, yeah,
yeah, at
probably, yeah.
11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
That's amazing. These memories are so formative too.
yeah.
Well, what was your I mean, when you went back home, and I mean, there was the crazy scenario, which I just I loved. I was watching a program on the cultural differences, and I
Yep.
think they were highlighting Dutch culture
Yep.
and being just really, the stereotype, but it's based in truth,
They're very
very
bold
straightforward,
too. Yep. Yep.
which to some might seem rude, but I've got some Dutch friends and they're just amazingly awesome, It's kind of similar, I feel like, to kind of
To the
what you're
Swiss, yeah,
describing
for
there.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only
Yeah.
we Swiss feel that the Dutch are very loud, so we
Oh,
add sort of the loudness factor to it.
okay. You got to add something. We have to differentiate at some point, right?
Well,
Just
because
like
for
in
like
business.
us, we don't see the being straight as an issue because that's just a mirror, right? So, what we see in the Dutch is that they're just very loud.
And very tall. And very, very, very
That's true.
tall.
Very tall. Yes.
Very
Yeah.
tall. Yeah. I'm 6 foot two, and we went to Amsterdam, and I was like, geez, these are like trees around here. Yeah, it's amazing.
Hmm.
Beautiful
Yeah.
place. And boy, they know their water. They know how to manage water there. All the
Oh well.
canals and
Yeah.
everything.
Manage it. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean they are incredible with management of water.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Switzerland, of course, an absolutely. I mean, to many people. I mean, I've been there, but as a child, and what sticks in my head are just the beauty that you can't even barely describe.
Yeah.
I mean, those mountains are unbelievable to me.
Yeah. It's a blessing to be from there and
Now,
live in New York.
and live in New York,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So tell me about that. You're 23. Are you doing filmmaking by 23, or if you're just what
I
are you
had
doing at
a phase
23?
at 23. I'm at university studying something that I know I cannot finish. Because in Switzerland, I studied German literature and linguistics. And in order to study what we called philosophy one track, you had to have Latin. And I'm heavily dyslexic, so Latin was not going to happen. So my love for language and for writing and for reading and for books, I just knew I wouldn't be able to get a master's degree, and bachelor's didn't exist back then. So I have an equivalent to a bachelor's, but it's meaningless. It means nothing. It just means that I took a couple of semesters and I passed my requirements. And I've done a 3 month internship at the first English speaking private business networking or business TV channel in Switzerland. So it was the first TV channel that got a license to be private and not state run, and it was a dual language English German morning show. And they hired me just because my boyfriend's father invested in it, so they kind of had to hire me. And secondly, I spoke fluent English because we grew up with English speaking au pair girls. My father did all his business in English, so we pretty much grew up dual, bilingual. So um, they took me for a 3 month internship, so I had a little bit of a taste of what TV media, what that world was like, and I knew that it was a very good fit for my level of energy, and I knew that was a world where quick thinking and reaction was something that was very much in demand, and I had that.
Do you remember that moment when you realized? What were you looking at when you had the moment of like, oh, this is for me?
The printer
Describe the scene.
Yeah, the printer broke down. It's 2 minutes before airtime. Everybody is, just freaking out. And somebody had to fix the printer. Just freaking out didn't help. I fixed the printer and I ran it into the studio because I knew it had to happen. There was no talk about when the repairman was going to come. That was not going to be helpful at that moment. I just innately knew that the only thing that was going to save the day was action.
So you were just a natural for that environment of like, hey, we've got these moments of high pressure, and in any kind of television production, everyone's got a massive clock, and you're, it's airtime,
And I'm
and you
like
just
running
thrived in it.
I'm running into the studio. I'm like, this is so cool. I just fixed the printer. And yes, it's really silly and stupid, but it just clicked, right? And that's also when they realized what they had with me. So when I left for America, because that had been set up prior to me doing this internship, they offered me a steady job for when I came back. So I went to America for one semester of school, knowing I had, a full steady employment coming back.
So you came to the States for that semester, and then what happened?
I fell in love with New York.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never went back to the studio, I guess. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I realized I think what was more important than that job, which was a very attractive job and really cool people. I'm friends to this day that I met back then. But what was more important to me is in the half a year, that first half a year in New York. Um, I mean, a lot of things were important, but the most important thing was that I realized I didn't have to get married and have children and be someone's wife. And that holds
How
true
did
to this day.
To
That
this
that was
day?
just, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
No, I mean that's powerful. I mean, it's powerful to see talk about a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a whole world opening up to. But what was it about being in New York at that time that led you to that conclusion? What informed it specifically?
Well, I mean, it's a while ago. So we're talking 89, right? This is really a time, yeah.
I remember 89 pretty
Oh,
well.
you do? Okay, good.
Yes,
Yes.
I do.
Yeah. So, Switzerland is a very, Zurich, where I grew up, is a very cosmopolitan town, but it's also very conservative, lily white. Everybody's either, everybody's Protestant, and there's a few Catholics sprinkled in, and that's about it, right? Um, I was an outlier because my best friend was Korean, and I hung out probably more at my Korean girlfriend's house than my parents when I was a child. So, and that was already considered like highly, highly foreign and very different. And sort of the racism that happened towards an Asian person was unbelievable. Let alone and anything else that was even different skin color. So it was just for me to come to New York, and I lived in a sublet with this really crazy woman who was subletting her one bedroom in her tiny subsidized apartment on way upper West Side, which back then was a terrible terrible neighborhood. There was an SRO next street, across the street. There was homeless shelter next to us. So, I mean, it was really skanky town. And yeah, I went to the new school, which had evening classes because the new school had been founded originally for GIs coming back from World War II, so they could continue with their studies. And the idea was they would have to work during the day to make a living and would go to school at night. I had originally been signed up for Parsons, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, I switched over to new school because they had a film department, and so I was roaming New York all day long and went to classes at night. And I just went to bars. I just picked up people randomly all over the place. I didn't know anybody, right? So it was for me just a free for all. Sort of shedding the little silk bow tie in my ponytail and the penny loafers with the actual penny in it, because I'm like, let's take the penny out, and someone might get mugged for that penny. Learning how to safely ride the subway, which safely meant not staring at people because Swiss people stare. And after like the third person yelled at me, "What are you looking at?" I'm like, okay, maybe not a good thing to do. Or mind your
Keep your
own
head down. Keep
yeah,
your head down. Yeah, yeah. Now
or
everyone's just staring at their phones. So,
yeah, exactly. Now it's a non issue, but it was just so immersive and so immediate and so other, and no one ever told me to not be so loud or not be so energetic, or I was taking the air out of the room. I mean, all these things that I heard all the time in Switzerland, I was just being me and unapologetically me for the first time in my life. So yeah, I didn't want to go back.
right. Yeah. And it's almost like a Rubicon because once you've crossed it, there is no going back. You
Yeah.
can't unsee and unexperience what you've experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So you're at the new school. You're in your early mid 20s. You get through that program. What happens after that?
Well, then it's a classical route that so many people take. I get a visa, a postgraduate visa, which leads to an H-1B visa, which leads to a what came after that? A year or two of limbo, but legal limbo, but limbo nevertheless. Then an investor visa, and then a green card, and then a citizen. And before I know it, I've been in America for 35 years,
Wow. Just just like that.
just like that. Yeah.
Who are the people in those early days? You mentioned your roommate. If I said who are the top three people that come to your mind that you met in those early days that really had an impact on you as
Oh,
this young woman, like awakening
yeah.
to the possibilities of life? Do you remember any characters? I mean, New York is full of characters. Let's face it, right? So,
How are we rated here?
oh, we're rated a strong R, I guess.
Okay. So, I mean, of course, there were some really great classmates in my class. Nan, in particular, Jewish girl. out to get the proverbial, doctor, which she did. And she was a hoot. She was extremely smart and fun. And her friend Gary, a dentist who really wanted to be a filmmaker. And those are sort of characters that I'm still in and out of contact with now. I mean, super loose, but still, we're connected. And then, a couple of teachers, of course. But really, it was all the endless guys that I picked up in bars and going out clubbing. And I met a fabulous guy who was a journalist from Jamaica who really was very strict with me to teach me proper English. My English was good, but it was not grammatically all over the frickin' place. So, he was very strict with me. There was a lovely gentleman from Haiti. There were lots of lovely gentlemen.
Okay, so you had a good time dating, it sounds like, and kind
Yeah.
of and not just dating, but also like doing self improvement along the way. So learning some new
Yes, yes. I
language
was,
things.
I always, in hindsight, I mean, it was the 80s that I never got AIDS or never got any kind of STD, or that I never got, I never was date raped. I mean, I was so lucky in my precautiousness, right? I think I always attracted people who kind of looked out for me. So I was very lucky.
Yeah. And so from the experience of the studio back in Switzerland, now you've been to the new school and you're actually studying in the area that you're interested in. I mean, you're moving in that direction.
Oh
What's
my
the
God, yeah.
next what's the next breakthrough, or the when the light shines on the path and you're like, "Yes, I'm moving in that direction." What happens?
I mean, there were quite a few, but I think sort of being on the first movie set, like real movie set, not just a student production, definitely was a big first step to sort of realize how the machinery works, how the hierarchy works, how a film is actually being made. I think that was probably sort of a really big milestone. And then I was very lucky again. I met a producer. I was just thinking about him. I remember his last name, but Paul. Now it came to me. Paul Kramer was a commercial producer. So I did features for a while, but the feature world was, highly abusive in terms of pay or the lack thereof and endless hours. My first job was $175 a week, 6-day week, 20 hours a day. And we were lucky to be on those jobs, right? We were lucky to have been on a job, right? So I started going more into direction of commercials, because commercials were still big ass productions and lots of fun, but at least you got a decent PA being a production assistant, you got a decent amount of money. And there was this one guy, Paul Kramer, who's now he's no longer with us. He saw something in me, and he took me I was a coordinator at the time, and he just taught me how to be a producer. And it was very methodical and was very step by step. And then very quickly he just said, okay, this is the next commercial, you're producing this. And I was like, ah. And he just was there for me the whole time and guided me through it step by step. And I remember, I'll never forget that day, standing on the set and looking at 60 people scurrying around. And I was like, I did this. I brought this together, and on budget. And I remember Paul standing next to me, and he knew what was going on with me. And then from then on, I was his producer for quite a while. And it was just, but somebody gave me a chance, right? And really taught me well, because the producers nowadays, they all say the producers, but they've never seen a budget. They don't know how to budget. And to me, a producer that doesn't budget is not a producer. So I really learned how to budget anything and everything, and how to budget such that it actually works, right?
In terms of being a producer, what did you learn was the true secret to being a great producer that you didn't realize before your mentor took you on? What was it underneath
The
all of that? What did he really teach you?
Well, I think, well, first of all, he taught me that it was easy to be a producer if you followed certain rules, right? Or certain steps. But I think what I really, 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 really learned was that I was in service of the crew and the talent. because they were stuck on the set. I was their lifeline to the outside world and the lifeline to enable them to do their best creative work. And I think as a producer, if you do not have that mindset, you're going to be miserable, because then you're just going to be like, I'm the producer, I'm important, I sign all the checks, I sign all the paychecks, blah blah blah. But that's not what you are as a producer. You're an enabler, and you are the conduit to, as I said, to the outside world.
Yeah, and nothing. I mean, without a producer, there's no show. I mean, I love the word is kind of accurate in that sense. You're
Yeah,
producing it,
yeah,
you're making it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But with a servant's mentality,
Yeah, I wouldn't say servant. I would say enabler, which to me is
enabler.
something slightly different. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, that's really good. So that person, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Mm.
That mentor that you meant. Okay. Um, did you work with him repeatedly after that, or was it just kind of a that one project?
I mean,
Okay.
it was for a phase. I mean, maybe 3 or 4 years, and then I moved then on to documentary work, and one of his producers, bigger, like big ass producers, poached me onto a huge documentary project. And then I stayed in the documentary world and complemented it with corporate video, because that complemented each other really well in terms of how it was produced, and how you could move talent from one to the other, and how the timing worked. Because with commercials, the moment you're out and you say no to a commercial gig, you're out, right? They're going on to the next producer, and they might never come back to you. So in the commercial world was all in or all out. And because as a producer I made a shit ton load of money on the day rate, they bring you in at the last minute and they throw you out immediately after. And what I loved with corporate video is I got half the rate, but I was on a gig for 3 or 4 months. And it allowed me to have a bit of a life. I could buy theater tickets, because I knew when we were in the pre production phase, I pretty much had control over my schedule. And then, it's shoot days and post production, and the clients swirling all over you. So you're not going to plan anything serious for a month. And then you had a week or so to clean it all up and button it up and put a bow on it. So you
Mm,
just had so much more, yeah, less money, also less excitement, which, at some point after 10 years of super excitement or whatever it is, it's actually nice to have less excitement, and you could plan the life a little bit more, and be less at the mercy of whatever the next gig was going to be.
that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is the arc was you start in features, you kind of move into documentaries, and then into corporate. Is
Yeah, I
that
mean, documentaries and corporate always ran together.
this is over a couple of decades, right?
Yeah, I mean, I
Of
moved into the corporate documentary probably within about 7 years of starting. So that transition happened. I became a producer very quickly, again, also with the help of Paul. But then once I started producing, I'm like, this is it. You know how sometimes you have these really big goals for yourself, and then you reach them, and you go like, okay. And that's what happened with producing commercials, because there was no, producing a documentary or even corporate. Um, there's a reason behind it other than selling the soap or the cereal. There was more soul in it. And as a producer on a commercial and documentary, I had a much wider role. In commercial, you're pegged into, you do the budget, you organize everything, you're out. You do the budget, you organize everything, you're out. And with a commercial or with a corporate video, I was also involved in the creative upfront. I was involved in putting the team together. I was involved in post production and the editing and the sometimes even distribution. So you have a much wider life cycle, and you learn a lot more. Like when I started with corporate, I knew nothing about editing, because other than what I had learned in film school, which was still with a Revis splicer, the thingamajig with the razor blade in it. And by then everything had moved into digital, and Avid was the big system that everybody used. I knew nothing about it, so I had to learn all of that. Which, again, a quick study, you fake it until you make it, sort of thing. And as a producer, you only need to know enough to sell it to the client, and kind of talk about it vaguely, and then The rest you just make up as you go.
Right. 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 There's some showmanship even in the producer role.
Oh,
You're putting on a
absolutely,
show.
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, bridging from that whole part of your career, which makes so much sense and it's inspiring, but I also hear that, you kind of arrive and you're like, okay, I'm here.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not the mountaintop that you once thought it was. It's not to diminish it, but when you get there, you realize, oh, this is actually not what maybe everything that I thought it was going to be.
And then, actually now I realize also, what happened at the 7-year mark or 8-year mark is I ran out of visas.
Aha. So you had an immigration issue as well. And then it was like, I got to become a citizen at some point.
No, that we weren't
No.
that came much further down the road. But I needed, so you get your student and you're a postgraduate for a year, and then you have H-1B. I mean, and this is back then. I don't know what it's like today. You had an H-1B opportunity for 6 years. So student 1 year, a year and a half, the postgraduate 1 year, 6 years H-1B, and now what is going to happen? So talk to the immigration lawyer. He's like, you've got two options. You get married. And I'm
Get
like,
married.
that's not going to happen. Definitely not going to go into a sham marriage. And I, didn't have a boyfriend at that time that would have even, qualified. And that's exactly what I didn't want. Or start your own business, get an E-1-2 visa, and start like down the road, sponsor yourself for a green card. So I'm like, yeah, sure. I always thought it would be cool to have my own business. It was also something that my father was on board with immediately because I had to show investment, and so we had to put up collateral, and I had to show that I was creating jobs for Americans. So we went through all of that, and I had no effing clue what I was doing. And the first application got turned down, and then the second one was accepted a year and a half later, and then all of a sudden I had Clockwise Productions, which I have to this day.
So that's going exactly to where I was going next, which was your current company, Clockwise Productions. And you're on LinkedIn, you're helping coaches, consultants, and creators. How did you start visualizing yourself? That's a pretty at the now in hindsight. I think for me anyway, I can look at your background and I can start guessing at all the lines between all the skills you learned as a producer and filmmaker and all of that, and directly relating to what you do now. But at the time, that probably wasn't as obvious, I'm guessing, or was it? Like, how did you make that
No,
leap?
and that's a really interesting part I look at now, where I'm one of those people who's probably overcoached. I've spent probably an MBA, and Harvard MBA worth of money in coaches over the years, but back then there was no such thing. I mean, there were people who helped you, and some of them were charlatans, and some of them were actually fantastic. But I go back to, I grew up as being to be someone's educated wife. That had been the benchmark that had been set for me, and I kind of never changed that identity. Right? I was still sort of the housewife that got away. That. But I never, and then I became the producer, but there was never the goal setting, the big goal setting, my why, all that. I didn't even have the language for any of this, right? That world did not exist to me. It was not accessible to me because I plainly just didn't know it existed. It was a complete blind spot. That world didn't open up to me until I met this one guy at some point who was talking about goal setting and having weekly calls and talk about the goals. And after the second call, I was like, this guy's a preposterous asshole. Like, I just don't need this kind of pressure. It was just like, again, it was like, going from, you know, pencil drawings like a sixth grader to being thrown in with Michelangelo and expecting to know what the fuck's going on, right? So I was missing all the in between completely. That world didn't open up to me until I came into the online space.
And then that's where your education started on what was even available to you as far as your self-development and business coaching and
Yeah, I had
everything.
done self development before, but it always was sort of. I mean, I had a fantastic coach, Diane DeRoche. Oh, she was amazing. When in the very, 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 very beginning, I had had some bad experiences early on with some clients who came in from Switzerland who took advantage. And a friend of mine set me up with her to learn how to set boundaries, and then but also learn how to read a P&L and how to read a balance sheet. And she encouraged me to take bookkeeping classes, which I did. And sort of just learn to be a business owner, not just a producer. um, but then there were also long times in between of no coaching, no nothing. And the support system was my one girlfriend who was also Swiss, also ran a production company, but she was a photographer producer. We had lunch once every 2 or 3 months. That was my mastermind. That was my sole support, right? So there, yeah, went to the networking events of the Chamber of Commerce, but you know wasn't my industry, wasn't my exact, was not a match. Like today, I have hundreds of people at my fingertip that I can call and ask for advice, who know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but I think so. Clockwise didn't start off as a business that was focused on LinkedIn. Clockwise started off as a
LinkedIn didn't exist. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it was a production company,
it
and
was
then
a production
you've
company for 19
right.
years. Yeah, we incorporated in '96 and started business when I got my visa approved on June 1st of '97. And I was a production service company for the first couple of years until 9/11 started. I mean, hit. And then after 9/11, the service part was dead in the water because no one came over from Europe anymore, not for a long time. So I had to, pivot, and then I became just a production company. And I dumped the service part, which actually was a good thing. And some of these pivots that were forced on me ended up being blessings in disguise, right? And then it was a production company until I think my last really bigger production job was fall of 17.
Tell me about that transition from that to what you're doing now. Like, how did that? I know that's a longer story, but when did the light go on, and who was instrumental in helping you to see there was an opportunity for you to take all of this talent and skill and experience and
Hmm.
translate it into serving people who are
In that
trying to,
sense,
work on LinkedIn? Yeah.
I mean, it was several things. I mean, most importantly, business wasn't what it was anymore. I literally got people who wanted me to produce the same video I would have charged $50,000 for $5,000. And they didn't want to make any you know changes to the budget. I'm like, okay, that is not a business model anymore, right? And I'm not exaggerating. So the people in my world that were shooting themselves, editing themselves, writing everything themselves, sort of the Renaissance people, they could still survive because they could bring everything in house, but they also were working themselves to the bone. But I was a highly trained producer. I also directed, but producing was my thing, and I was. And there was no demand for me anymore in that way. So I knew I had to either go back as being a freelancer, which I did for a couple of years, and I just hate it. Um, and I kept being asked to reduce my rate. I'm like, that's not how the world works. I'm supposed to up my rate as I become more seasoned and more, um, and as life around me gets more expensive, not reduce my rate. So everything was just wrong in my business, and it just didn't feel good anymore. And then a friend of a friend of a friend introduced me to this woman, Tanya Alvarez, who was this fast talking coach. And she was my coach for quite a while. And she just opened up this whole online world to me. And I also had a friend, Samir, he lives in the building here, Samir Salmanovich, whom you might actually know. He was the one who asked me for advice on how to create videos for an online course he was planning. So I sat down with him, and at the end of the session, he was like, "Oh my God, you need to do this for a living. You're so amazing at this." And that's when I, for the first time, sort of saw an opportunity where there never had been one before. And then, yeah, so I started like 16 into 17. I started embracing all things online courses and being a coach, and I had no effing clue what that even meant, let alone I'd never taught anything. So it was a very long and painful process that has lasted for the last 8 years. And I feel like maybe established somewhere around the pandemic, I finally felt like I was getting a bit of a foothold.
It's amazing. I've done a bunch of episodes under we started off as the Building Business Relationship Show. We're moving now to the full name as we go into launch phase. But at the heart of it, it's the same purpose, which is to understand like the human dynamics. And to a person, almost every single person I've talked to, when they share a story about how they came to be doing something that's really true to themselves, that's good, it always has involved somebody who saw them and
Mhm.
gave them some feedback and said, Nina, like Samir, Nina, you're really good at this. You should be doing it.
Yeah.
I had a TV producer a couple of years ago who's done all the major talk shows say the same thing to me about being on camera. He says, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You got to
Well,
do more." And I was like, "I
I
know,
know
but I
somebody else I know said that to you as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not, but again,
Yeah.
like we have this narrative for you, the narrative that went on for so long about how success looks like me finding a successful man to marry and being the side piece, basically, the
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
system, right? The
Yep.
good wife,
Yep.
which is a good thing for some people. There's nothing wrong with it, but
Yep.
it may not be
Well,
Nina.
really, it was very clear for me and I had that
Yeah.
good man. I mean, he was waiting for me in Switzerland. We ditched him in the process, and that's another yet again also another story. But it was just not. I always knew in my heart that that was not what I was meant to do.
Yeah. And when you can really hear it, and then there are these moments when you meet the right person at the right time, they say it to you and you actually hear it.
And you're open, and I think that is probably the single most important thing. Is like, I'm sure a lot of wonderful people say wonderful things to you, but you have to be open to receiving it at that moment, and have had the experience. It's like that poor guy who tried to put me into, wanted to mastermind with me. um and I was really rude to him. I told him to go F himself. um it was just, I couldn't, I didn't have the tools and the self-development, and I wasn't in a place in my life. He was a professional coach. I didn't even know what that was, what that really meant. I had not experienced it, right? I was all in the world where, if it didn't function, you yelled at the teamster and you hoped he didn't, stab your tire, and you would, negotiate with a super fancy dumbass CEO of a Fortune 500 company who didn't even talk to you directly, but only talked to you while you were standing right in front of him through his secretary. That was the shit I was dealing with on a day. That was my reality. So the fancy, coach and setting goals, there was no antenna for any of this back then. Just
It,
didn't even enter my
no.
life, right?
Yeah, no. And I do know Samir. He's become a dear friend. And so yeah, I just shot video with him last week.
Yeah, he's
So
a mensch. He's a real mensch. Yeah.
and he is a mensch, and he is one of those types of people who's so present and soulful, spiritual, and he's like looking at you, but he's looking at you deeply. Like he sees your whole being, and then he comes out with these reflections, and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, I got to work on accepting that because that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Our worlds are the world is small, and our little community is even smaller. So
Yep.
it's a joy to be connected with all of you. So at some point in the near future, we are going to spend some episodes going deeper into things like how do we relate to one another via social media right now? And
Mhm.
that's not the primary focus of this conversation today, but can we just give a little hint and preview? And of course, I'm going to invite you back for roundtables about this because I think it's really important. You know, it's not like there are people who take these extremist positions. I'm just off of all social media and I'm going to go eat liver and live in the woods. But you know,
I
you
hate
know,
liver. My God, if there's one thing I will never eat in my life, it's liver.
right? I
And
hate it.
probably a bullseye, but that's yeah.
I am
Um,
with you on that. Yeah, I no liver for me. Never.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
no.
never.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
no.
Smells
I don't
good,
care
but
what you. I don't care what you do to it either. Oh no, this doesn't even. It's like no. I can
mm-mm. Yep,
smell it a mile away. I
yep,
know what it is. I don't want it.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm glad we could agree on the liver. It's interesting that you bring up the off social media, blah blah blah. I'm actually invited into a couple of talks this summer um, on the topic of growing your business without social media. And then I get an invite. I'm like, you guys know I'm a LinkedIn specialist, right? Um, and this is the part of what I love about LinkedIn is, LinkedIn is sort of a little bit on the outside of the social media world in that it is also, in my opinion, and obviously these hosts are smart women. It's also a networking tool, right? There's a very strong component. That it does not scream social media, and I think as such LinkedIn cannot be ignored, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be on that platform and know how to use it well.
absolutely. Yeah. And there's all kinds of hot topics that I'm not going to bring up now, even though I have them here because I was just in case we had time. But I know we're running short on time,
Just in
so I
case
just.
my life was so boring that we were going to have time to talk about
Oh,
that.
right. That was the presumption. You got it. Exactly. That's actually the application for the show. How boring is your life? And if you're low on the scale, less editing. Less editing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, don't have to edit it. There really was nothing there.
yeah.
I should call it Empty Calories with Matt Stone. Just come on
There
by.
we
It's a
go.
hostess cupcake. No nutrition, a little bit sweet, over quickly.
Yeah,
There's issues around the algorithm and what the role of bias is playing in the algorithm around
yeah.
gender and other things. There's is AI slop just kind of making everything kind of crappy? Can you really build relationships on LinkedIn? Hint: yes, you can.
Yes, you.
Um, right, but it does take being intentional about your humanity and your humanness in that
Which
experience.
is in real life no difference, right? I mean, that's what I always try to tell people. It's like, it's like when people say like, oh, there's, I don't know what to say in the DMs. I don't know how to move the conversation forward. I'm like, the way you move a conversation forward when you're at a networking event, holding a cocktail in your hand and having a conversation. You don't just like have somebody ask you a question and you go, don't even say I'm sorry, and you go to the bathroom and never come back. I mean, it's the same on social media, right? Or on LinkedIn particularly. And maybe the AI slop is a great opportunity to stand out against it, and connect with those people you want to be connecting with.
I love that perspective. And I think the other thing about your story that's so crystal clear is 2026 is not the year when it started that you had to be able to pivot. Like
No,
the
it doesn't happen.
amazing, I mean, like AI, what I mean is AI is not the first
Mm.
massive
No,
disruption. And
no,
you dealt with all kinds of places in your arc thus far, and there's a lot more to go. But where you faced the music about some reality and then figured out what your next play was going to be.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you're bringing all of that to your clients, and I know personally that you bring that to all of
yeah,
your clients, is that perspective.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
sometimes you don't even realize it, right? It's just such a part of me, right? That yeah, yeah,
I think part of your, if I'm right, a good part of your client base is not all of them, but there are a lot of people who are a good fit for you who have had a career doing something and now they're moving into the next.
phase,
Maybe
yeah.
they were in corporate or they were in a career and now they're going on their own. And I feel like you've got a lot to give those people. Is my perception right on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at it that way, but now that you mention it, maybe I should make that a talking point when when I'm on the sales call. Yeah, I mean, there's certain. I mean, look, I just turned 60. At my age, if you haven't pivoted, then you've done something really wrong in your life, right? And then I probably wouldn't be invited into a podcast such as this. So. Um, there's the life experiences, and the pivots and the changes that you just innately deal with, and I think for some people they happen automatically and are built in. you get married, you have children, the children leave the house, you're an empty nester, and now you stare at your spouse and go like, and what now, right? So, but and for me, they were just not built in. But they were, or maybe just built in differently because I had a business I was running. My business is my life, and I had to deal with. I always joked. I said, "Clockwise is the baby I never wanted, right, or the child I never wanted." So life just throws you curveballs, and for all of us, right? So I think there's maybe just yes, I've had these experiences, but other people my age will have had them too. They're just going to be slightly different or totally different.
Yeah, I admire your resilience sells you short. I mean, resilience is part of it, but you're not just resilient, you're curious, you want to learn, you want to grow. And so you're, as my friend Tasha Urich wrote in her latest book, Shatterproof, it's not just about resilience. Because if you're only trying to get back up after getting knocked down, eventually the punch is going to knock you out.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the
Yeah.
day I stop learning, that will be the day I die or I'm dead. It's very interesting. Merle, since we're talking about relationships, Merle Worth, absolutely phenomenal filmmaker and a big, big, big mentor of mine. Um, I once said to her, over dinner, I said, I'm looking for something. I don't know what it is, but I think I'm getting closer, and I can't wait to like find it. And she sort of, put her fork down. She said, "Nina, honey, I hope you'll never find it." And I looked at her like, "What the f? I mean, you're being rude here." And she said, "Look," said, "life is all about finding it. Once you've found it, you're dead." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I mean, she said it much more eloquently, but that was the gist of it.
I absolutely love that. Man, the people, the characters, and I'm sure there's like a gazillion more of the characters you've brought into the stage here in your
Yeah,
story. Incredible. I mean, we could do a whole episode on each one of them because
probably.
it's
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
meaningful.
Definitely. Yeah. 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 And then
All right, we have a
and they've been. I'm mentioning the ones that were positive. I've learned a lot from some very not nice people too. So
yeah, you and me both. You and me
yeah.
both, my friend.
Yeah.
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 Okay, let's wrap up here. I've got a little fun way of wrapping up. I have kind of a rapid fire question, kind of a
Oh dear. Okay.
rapid. You can do this. These
I
are
can do
like,
this.
oh yeah,
Okay. It's
you
like
got
fix a printer, fix a printer, fix a printer.
no, yeah, yeah. No, you got this. We're going on air in 3 seconds. Three, two, one. Nina, answer the question.
Got
How do
it.
you
10
fix a printer?
seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
What?
I said, how do you fix a printer?
Right.
All right.
You
It's
fix it.
called
Yeah.
make a PDF and don't print it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just a few questions. Some of them are silly, but they're a way to get to know you better, and then we'll get to
Okay. Mhm.
semi-serious. But don't worry, they're not a heavy lift. Okay, you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Go.
Favorite breakfast food?
Uh, Lattes.
Love it. That counts. Least favorite breakfast food?
Sausage.
Something that you must do in your lifetime that you have not yet done.
There is a list. I would say see Patagonia.
What do you think is a word in your world that is overused?
How much time do we have? I
2 seconds.
mean, 2 seconds. Oh my God, there's so many. Choose one. Choose one, Nina. Fluff.
Fluff.
Hmm. It's an AI
Um,
word. And I hate it with a passion.
any underused words that come to mind?
Nervous system, happiness, balance.
All right, now this is gonna we're moving the needle slightly. A couple more questions. What is your best advice for a young entrepreneur who's experiencing their first big failure from their point of view?
I think I sort of addressed it a little earlier in the conversation, which is that failure, as awful as it is, maybe even leads to, financial hardship or whatever, it will have been one of your most important learning lessons. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon enough. You just
That's
don't know it
great.
yet.
That's
Yeah.
great advice. Yeah. What are you most curious about right now?
I mean, I'm super curious to see how the online space will morph under everything AI. So what are the checks and balances that are going to come down the pike? and how are people going to embrace it and not, and how will people be left behind? Because I think, especially at my age, that is a big consideration. I have friends who never did did a proper internet transition, even at age 50 or so, and they're dead in the water. And I think we're going to be even deader in the water if we don't move on with AI and make sure we understand. Not I just want to flip the switch. I don't want to know what happens when I switch to flip the switch, right? I just want to turn the light on. But I need to know where the switch is and which room it lights up, right? So I do need to know that.
Well, if anyone's going to figure it out, it's you. So if someone's watching this and they're like, I want to get in contact with Nina, I like her, I want to follow her work, maybe explore having her help me with my business or my LinkedIn presence. I'm guessing it's LinkedIn, but tell the people, where can they find you?
I mean, definitely LinkedIn. I'm the only Nina Froriep there, so it's easy to find me. And then send me a DM and tell me that you heard me on the show, so I have context because I love context. You can also email me at nina@clockwiseproductions.com.
All right. So email, LinkedIn, mention that you saw her on this show, and that'll help as well. And Nina, I know how to reach you, and I'm glad I do. And thank you for sharing today. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for asking questions that were different. Really appreciate that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We are hard at work building this show, and we treasure your feedback and suggestions and thoughts. So please like and subscribe so you can follow the content. And then don't be shy. Don't be shy. Hit reply, as Nina likes to write in her emails. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.